How to fix an anxious and avoidant relationship. In today's modern dating world, where every text message can either calm your heart or break it, few relationship dynamics are more emotionally intense than the bond between an anxious partner and an avoidant partner. It's the most common yet the most misunderstood pairing, a connection defined by closeness, distance, longing, frustration, and a cycle that feels impossible to break. And yet, despite the chaos, this dynamic keeps pulling people back to each other. So the real question isn't why this relationship feels so unstable. The real question is, can it be fixed? And the answer, if both people are willing, is yes. But it requires understanding something deeper than surface behavior. It requires understanding their emotional programming. The first step is recognizing that neither side is the problem. Both the anxious and the avoidant carry wounds they didn't ask for. The anxious partner grew up believing love could disappear at any moment, so they chase closeness to avoid abandonment. The avoidant partner grew up believing closeness leads to disappointment or suffocation, so they protect themselves through distance. These two patterns collide in a way that's almost predictable. The anxious pushes for reassurance, the avoidant withdraws for safety, the anxious panics, and the avoidant shuts down further. It's not toxic intent, it's trauma dancing. The relationship only begins to heal when both stop blaming each other and start understanding the emotional blueprint behind the reactions. For the anxious partner, the most powerful shift is learning that closeness is not built by chasing. It's built by calming yourself enough that the other person doesn't feel pressured to run. Anxious partners often think, if I don't remind him how I feel, he'll forget. If I don't ask what's wrong, I'll lose him. If I don't check in, he'll drift away. But in reality, every anxious pursuit, even when it's loving, activates the avoidance alarm. What the anxious partner must master is emotional self-regulation. Not silence, not pretending, but grounding. Learning to breathe before reacting. Learning to respond, not panic. Learning to soothe their own thoughts rather than using the relationship as a bandage. Because nothing calms an avoidant more than a partner who has control over their own emotional waves. On the other side, the avoidant partner must learn that distance is not the solution, it's the trigger. Avoidants believe protecting their space keeps the relationship stable, but it actually does the opposite. When avoidants pull away without explanation, the anxious partner spirals into fear, which leads to overfunctioning, which then overwhelms the avoidant even more. The avoidant must understand that sharing thoughts, even in small doses, creates safety. A simple, I need alone time, but I still care about you, can calm an anxious partner more than hours of silence. Avoidants don't need to become emotional poets. They just need to communicate the intention behind their distance. Because when the anxious knows it's not rejection, their entire nervous system relaxes. The real healing begins when both partners stop acting from fear and start acting from awareness. When the anxious partner feels the urge to chase, they pause and ask themselves, is this my fear talking or my truth? When the avoidant feels the urge to withdraw, they ask, am I protecting my peace or am I running from intimacy I actually want? Tiny shifts like this can break the cycle. It turns panic into presence. It turns fear into clarity. It turns emotional chaos into emotional maturity. One of the most powerful tools for fixing this relationship is structured communication. Unstructured conversations usually end in arguments, misunderstandings, or emotional shutdowns. But when both partners agree on a format, things change. For example, they can set weekly check-ins, 15 to 20 minutes where each partner shares how they felt during the week, without blame, without accusations, and without emotional explosions. The anxious partner gets predictable reassurance. The avoidant partner gets emotional safety because the conversation has boundaries. Predictability stabilizes both nervous systems. The relationship stops feeling like a battlefield and starts feeling like a partnership. Another essential step is redefining space. For the avoidant, space must be healthy, not disappearing, not stonewalling, not punishing. For the anxious, space must be reframed, not as abandonment, but as a natural breathing room. The couple must build a shared understanding that space is part of love, not the end of it. The avoidant should communicate before pulling away, and the anxious should practice trusting that temporary distance is not the beginning of loss. This balance creates a rhythm where both closeness and space coexist without fear. But perhaps the most transformative element is emotional attunement. Anxious partners often communicate through emotion, tone, intensity, urgency. Avoidants communicate through logic, facts, plans, boundaries. Both need to learn the other's language. When an anxious partner expresses emotion, the avoidant should listen without shutting down or intellectualizing. When an avoidant shares their boundaries, the anxious partner should honor them without taking it personally. The moment both partners step into each other's emotional world, even a little, the relationship shifts from trauma bonding to conscious bonding. Healing also requires breaking the pursuer-distancer loop. This loop is responsible for 90% of the pain in anxious-avoidant relationships. The anxious pursues because they feel distance. The avoidant distances because they feel pursuit. And the cycle keeps reinforcing itself until both are exhausted. To break it, the anxious partner must slow their pursuit, and the avoidant partner must slow their distancing. Not by force, but by awareness. By realizing that both behaviors come from fear, not disrespect. When both partners soften, just a little, the entire emotional pattern begins to dissolve. And here's the part many people overlook. An anxious-avoidant relationship is not ruined by the differences. It's ruined by the reactions. If the anxious partner can regulate their fear of losing someone, and the avoidant partner can regulate their fear of being consumed, the relationship becomes one of the strongest. Why? Because anxious partners bring emotional depth, empathy, connection, and passion. Avoidant partners bring independence, stability, perspective, and calm. When healed, these two strengths create a partnership that is balanced, powerful, and deeply bonding. Of course, fixing this connection requires a willingness from both sides. An anxious partner cannot fix it alone. An avoidant partner cannot fix it alone. Both must meet in the middle, slightly uncomfortable but connected. The anxious moves 20% toward independence. The avoidant moves 20% toward intimacy. That small overlap becomes the place where love can finally breathe. In the end, healing an anxious-avoidant relationship is not about changing who you are. It's about understanding why you react the way you do and choosing better patterns. It's about learning that your nervous system does not have to control your relationship. It's about creating a safe emotional environment where closeness feels comforting for the avoidant and stability feels calming for the anxious. When both partners rise above their triggers and lean into understanding, this relationship can transform from one of the most painful experiences into one of the most meaningful connections you'll ever have. Because the truth is, anxious and avoidant partners don't come together by accident. They come together because their wounds recognize each other. But healing begins when their wisdom recognizes each other too. And once these two finally learn the dance, not the dance of chasing and running, but the dance of awareness and intention, the relationship stops being a battlefield and becomes a place where both people feel seen, supported, and finally safe.